Good evening, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting tonight. We have good turnout from the public on a very controversial matter. I'm going to run through a number of items and then go to the public forum. And when we get to the public forum, I'll explain again the process that we're going to go through for the sake of the public's understanding. I'd also like to point out that before we start the meeting, I have to inform you that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and recorded for future viewing on the Council's YouTube channel. Now, when a member of the public stands up to speak, we will not film that part. It'll just be, the camera will be kept on the members or the officers, but obviously your voice will be heard. So, first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Mr. Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Adam Davis, Councillor Zafari's and Councillor Joe Roberts.
Okay. Thank you. To report the appointment of any substitute members serving for this meeting on the committee.
Mr. Chair, we've got Councillor Phil Atkins substituting for Adam Davis and Councillor Tim Crumpton substituting for Councillor Peter.
Thank you. Next item is to receive any declarations of interest under the Members' Code of Conduct. Do we have any? I'll take that as a no. And now we're going to just go through the minutes from the last meeting, which starts on page FC15 in my document. So do we have any comments on that, anything on that page? FC16. FC17. FC18. FC19. FC20. FC21. FC22. And FC23. Okay, no comments, so we'll take those meetings as read. We come to the public forum. It's an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of the officers and members, I believe. We allow half an hour strictly for the start to end of it, and we allow each question 5 minutes for the question and the answer. Now, I've counted that there's probably about 6 or 7 people tonight who want to ask a question. So I'm going to try and be fair, and I think that some of you have come as pairs and groups. So I'm going to try and be fair and start off, move to each group and see how we get on. Councillor Foster.
If members of the public are here to ask questions or make comments about the Black Country Plan, what I had intended to raise as part of the scrutiny process was that detailed notes are made of contributions.
Sorry, could you say again?
If the public forum is going to include comments and questions from the public about the Black Country Plan,
Yeah.
which we've yet to determine the process for conducting, can their contributions be captured in detail, please, so that they can be integrated into the scrutiny exercise? If they have questions on the Black Country Plan.
There will be. The questions, I think, are all on the Black Country Plan, and they will all be included. And if they can't be answered by an officer, as is normal in a scrutiny committee, the officer will then go away and get the answer and come back directly to us and the member of public.
Thank you.
Yeah? And the meeting's being recorded as well. So it's available to the public straight after this. And also historically, I don't know how long it stays on YouTube, but all the previous meetings are on there as well. Okay. The first question I'm going to ask to the lady in the middle of the group over there, which is Linda Bateman. And do you want people to come to the microphone at the front? Here. Yep. If you could just walk up to where the microphone is in the stand at the rostrum, and then just, if I'd like the members of the public to introduce who you are by name and what area of the borough that you're from.
Chair, can everyone hear me? Just to check that. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to come along this evening and put questions to members in the Scrutiny Committee. My name is Linda Bateman, as the Chair says, and I live in Worcester Lane in Pedmore in Stourbridge. And you will know within the plan there are sites in Worcester Lane that are being put, green belt sites that are being put forward. My colleagues are with me also from Worcester Lane. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. And the question I would like to put forward is around the sustainability appraisals of all of the sites that were put forward on the call for sites. And we understand how they were carried out at the top level. I would like some information of what local input was put into those appraisals, so what local detail was taken into account, because when we look at our 3 sites in Worcester Lane, we are very much of the view that had quite obvious faults with those sites been taken into account, they perhaps would not have been put forward. And so how have those sustainability appraisals been localised, if I can use that expression? And how have you managed to ensure that all greenfield and brownfield sites have actually been put forward, assessed properly at a local level, and been put in that plan before green belt were put in? Because I think we've put green belt in there, and there are sites that could have been put in there, and our green belt will be lost as a consequence of that, Chair. So does my question make sense to officers? Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Enterprise. So she'll be fielding the questions tonight. And we also have a Cabinet Member, Councillor Simon Phipps, and a Shadow Cabinet Member for Combined Authority, Councillor Bateman.
Thank you. Thank you. Should I take a seat or no? Thank you.
Okay, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. If I can make some general comments about the second point made in the statement, which is about the ensuring green field. Is that any better?
Just carry on speaking. I'm fine.
You're fine the level. Okay.
It's hot. I've got to find a bit more and turn you on.
Okay, thank you. If I can respond to your second point first, which is the general point about ensuring all brownfield land is considered before greenfield, and then if it's okay, Chair, I'll ask Liz to comment on the detailed sustainability point that was raised. So absolutely, it's imperative that we consider all brownfield land before we consider greenbelt. It's a national policy requirement that happens, and it's part of the due plan process. So some of the sites that go forward, all of the sites, not just greenbelt sites, some of them are coming forward from previous plans, some of them are sites that have planning approvals, some of them are allocations that we had in other plans that have just travelled with it, and some of them are new allocations, and some of them, as you point out, are in the greenbelt near to where you live. That has been done on the basis of an evidence base, and when we have exhausted all of the brownfield land allocations, and that includes increasing densities in urban centres and urban capacity, so putting the appropriate maximum amount of houses on other sites. So only after we've exhausted all of those, and we've demonstrated there is still a housing need that has to be met, do we go to, thank you, do we go to greenbelt? Because there are very stringent national tests that have to be met, and we have to show an exceptional circumstance to even consider it. So as a general principle, it remains the priority to look at brownfield land first. Greenbelt is a last resort and subject to quite rigorous evidence-based and analysis before we do that. If Chair, I could ask Liz to comment on the sustainability appraisal point.
You want to ask a subsequent?
Yes. Yeah.
We've got the volume.
I just point out that there was the first part of the question, part of the question about local input. I don't think
That's the bit I'm asking Liz to respond on. Okay.
I'm Elizabeth, I'm Project Manager for the Black Country Plan, so I work across all 4 authorities. I can hear myself now. And in terms of local input, aside from the sustainability appraisal, we've done a site assessment of every site. So there's been a site visit conducted and we've obtained ecological information and biodiversity data as well on those sites. All that information has then been fed into the sustainability appraisal, which has been conducted by an independent consultant, because we need to do that independently. And that's then assessed against a range of criteria. So that's looking at accessibility, pollution, waste, housing, equality, the economy, biodiversity, ecology, as I mentioned earlier. And that's all fed into the assessment and taken account of against all of those criteria for each site.
Okay. That's okay, we'll move on. I'm going to move to that side. Third row about the lady in the blue jumper. Hello, all the gentlemen.
Hi, my name's Steve Cutler. I live in Wall Heath. I'm part of a campaign group called Wall Heath as One. My question is regarding the Kings Winford Neighbourhood Growth Policy, specifically, and its association with the Black Country Green Belt in our area. There are 2 sites, Holbeach and the Triangle, which are large green belt areas which have been deemed worthy of converting into housing. The feeling in our area is very anti that, and we'll do our best to fight for our corner. My question regarding this is, there are 1,750 houses proposed, selected, within 2 miles of Wall Heath. It doesn't appear that any account has been taken to what South Staffordshire are doing, because also within 2 miles of Wall Heath, there's potential for either a very large industrial estate and a minimum of 1,500 houses, or another nearly 3,000 houses if the industrial estate is rejected. Add to the 1,750 that have been selected under the Dudley part of the Black Country Plan. This, I may say, is a fairly astounding number of houses or industrial sites to be imposed on one area. Could you give me some kind of reasoning as to whether you've actually consulted with South Staffordshire what they're doing? Or haven't you even considered it? Thank you.
Thank you. Helen?
To answer the question, absolutely yes, we have consulted with South Staffs. We have, under the regulations that planning is governed, we have what's known as a duty to cooperate obligation, and that works both ways. They have a duty to cooperate with us in our local plan process, and we have a duty to cooperate with them. So we have regular meetings with all of our neighbours. Those of you that are more familiar with the Black Country plan work and sat in previous scrutinies or cabinet meetings will be aware that quite a reasonable amount of our housing provision is potentially being delivered for us by neighbouring authorities under the duty to cooperate. So yes, we have conversations with South Staffs. We are having very positive duty to cooperation conversations whereby South Staffs are likely to provide us reasonably substantial contribution to the Black Country housing need. And those conversations will continue through the life of the development of the plan and beyond. Liz, I know there's a wider conversation there about the impact, but anything else you wanted to add on duty to cooperate conversations?
Yeah, just to add really, in terms of We are working with South Staffordshire and we try to align our timetables because obviously it makes sense for when members of the public get involved in the plan process that you get to view their plan alongside the Black Country plan. So their timetable, I believe, they'll be consulting later on in the autumn. There will be some overlap between the two plans and when we're consulting, so you'll be able to see what's proposed in South Staffordshire alongside the Black Country.
Helen, do you want to come back?
Just as an additional point, obviously any member of the public, whether they live in Dudley or South Staffs, can comment on either plan. And if a planning application was put in, then obviously we would, if it's on the boundary, be notified as a neighbouring authority anyway, and we have the opportunity to comment. We have the opportunity to make representations to their plan and, if necessary, ask to be heard at their inquiry. So there are a number of levels of which we as an authority and local residents can engage in both processes.
Okay, thank you, Helen. If it's okay, sir, I'll move on to the next question. There's a gentleman sitting next to the lady in the blue sweater who's looking down. Did you want to ask a question, sir? Okay, I'm going to move on to the lady next to you on there and ask you to come forward and ask your question.
Hi to everyone. My name's Andrea Smith and I'm from Wall Heath as well. I'm just quoting from local government guidance actually. Section 4 where it's consulting residents. Consultation is technically any activity that gives local people a voice and an opportunity to influence important decisions. I think that Dudley Council is actually failing in that section 4 of consulting residents. If you try to object to the Black Country Plan, and also I want to raise the point about the Black Country Plan. I'm sure if you spoke to lots of people on the street, they would not actually understand what the Black Country Plan is. As an authority, I feel that you have an entitlement to put into plain English terms. We talk about plain English. That is not being projected by Dudley Council, I feel. I feel that you are really heading for a judicial review regarding the Black Country Plan and how you have consulted with residents. Residents have not been written to, saying as to where the actual sites are. I actually registered to find out about it. I have not received anything from Dudley Council, and quite a few residents on my estate have also done the same. We have not been told that the document has been opened, so I would like to know why I have not received any further information. I would also like to know as to why Dudley residents are not being written to individually as to say why is the triangle being proposed as housing, why is Hull Beach site being also proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, when you're ready.
I think there's a number of detailed points there that I think it's fair to say we need to go away and check that particular response to be able to answer why some of those things haven't happened. In terms of the generalities, then obviously at a very basic level, what we have to do is quite tightly defined by law and set out in terms of things that we must do and process that must be followed. Above and beyond that, we can always go. So, for example, you know, we've done a slightly extended consultation period, 2 weeks longer than we are obliged to do, and we are trying to do a range of events to reach out to as many people as possible. We have had some feedback on the website. We have already put in place some improvements to that. If there are specifics, more than happy to take those away and look at what further improvements can be made.
And there are 12 chapters to the Black Country Plan, and 7 appendices. So it's really, really difficult to object to the plan. I spoke to Ed Lawrence, who's obviously the vice chair of the committee. You run an IT company, don't you, Ed? And you even quoted how difficult it was. Sorry if that was not supposed to be public knowledge, but you quoted the other day in a meeting how difficult it was to actually access that plan. So it's just ridiculous. If you go to section 4 of the actual consultation with residents, It states here how you should consult with them. Dudley Council isn't doing that. You're just asking. Also in Dudley North, there's 25% of residents who are over 65. Are they going to log on to there and register there? Objection. No, they're not. You have to have a password to register. I consider myself to be ICT literate, but I don't want to go all through that plan. I strongly object and feel that you should be writing to residents, explaining what is happening in the borough. Can I ask, under the freedom of information, that you explain how much it's actually costed to put on the back of double-decker buses about advertising the Black Country Plan? How much is that costing? Is anybody able to answer that tonight?
Well, Helen and Councillor Phipps wants to come in, but
Yeah.
we've had a grant from the government of £560,000
Yes,
to undertake
I
this
realise that.
exercise.
Yeah.
Councillor Phipps, do you want to come on one point?
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to address some of the points with regards to the website, because certainly the website is one of the preferred ways that we'd ask people to comment, but we know that not everybody will be able to do so.
Yeah.
Addressing the website, first of all, when the website was launched, having a look through that, the wayfinding through the Black Country Plan website, which is ours, so that's blackcountryplan.dudley.gov.uk, into the consultation site, could have been improved. Pick that up, and we've improved that, and I think now you can click through. Thank you very much. You can click. So I'd like to speak to the person as well. Talk to the person like looking at them. So
I'm trying to move the mic over.
there you go. The wayfinding through to the actual consultation website, I think, has been improved. We've put more things that's more obvious on the front page of the website to be able to get people through to there. And then moving on, when we get onto the consultation website, we've asked for various improvements to be able, so when you go onto that web page, it's not so much of a hard job to be able to get from the top of the index of the right down to the bottom and find the actual consultation on the site specifically.
I disagree. I still think it is.
Yeah.
We've had to have these. We've had a surgery on Saturday
Can
and
we-
on Mondays, and we've got 3
Can we
more
let- can we-
planned. We've had to have these in paper. None of our residents can get on your website.
I'd like to get to that, please.
And all the numbers
Yeah.
are different to what you've put down that we've got to register these for.
If-
A lot of our
Can I-
residents are
Can I just
elderly.
raise a point here?
They cannot get on the website. They cannot
I would like
understand.
to address
Why
your
do you
points,
think that we
please.
keep asking for these?
Yeah.
And apparently, according to your office where we've had these from, your logistics isn't even set up to send this amount out.
Could I ask you to stop there and sit down? I did ask you earlier if you wanted to ask a question, and you've interrupted this lady's time. So it would have come to you if you put your hand up.
I honestly want to address the points that's been raised and also acknowledge that things need to be taken on board to be able to improve the experience for people. Now, if I move on to the next point, which was regard to actually commenting on sites, one of the first things that I asked officers to do was make it easy for people to comment on the stuff that they actually care about. Now, I will be absolutely honest with you and turn around and saying I could imagine that 90% of residents do not really give that much of a thought to what percentage of affordable housing will be put where the various different technical aspects of the consultation will be. It's going to be about what sites are being suggested to allocate
I
it.
think my point is that people don't know what sites.
And
Because there hasn't been anything put along the A449 to say this site is going to be used. So that is my most important point. Because advertisements placed on buses, as well as utilising local radio and press releases, all you are saying is the Black Country Plan. So I go back to my point where I talked about basic English. Lots of people don't understand what a Black Country Plan is. They don't understand that you have this process. Because lots of people do not understand a local government process. They're not able to access the information that I've accessed today about consulting with residents. You failed on how to consult with residents.
so I think...
So my point is, and is that going to be answered, are you going to write to the residents of Dudley, of Kingswingford and Warleith saying that these are going to be proposed sites? Because what you've talked about is a new primary school as well. You know, you're talking about changing the road structure. Warleith will not be a village anymore. But over the last few days, I've become involved with this. And when I've spoken to people, they don't even know that those sites have been proposed. So you're not getting out there, you are not addressing the people. Going back to that point where I'm saying about consultation is technically an activity that involves local people and a voice. You are not getting local people's voice. I'm sure that more people would be here tonight if they knew about all those sites. Let's call for a meeting on the Dudley Kingswingford
Can I make a point
Club.
here? If you feel you're not having enough opportunity to talk about the plan and put your views forward, contact your local councillors, because what we are doing, is we're having meetings, and I think I was talking to the Councillor Salim over there. He's getting 150 people turning up on a local meeting. You're not under time pressure like we are here to air your views. You can have appointments with the officers face to face if you want to. And there's lots of literature and information going out to libraries. So I have difficulty understanding the process, and I've been through it once before. So we want the public to understand the process and be on our side, because we have got to use up the brownfield sites. So I'd encourage you to refer back to your councillors to have one of these meetings and invite the officers along. I'm sure Helen will respond to some of your points tonight.
The Freedom of Information Act, how much it has cost for the buses as well. Can that be noted, please?
I've no
the
idea.
Advertisements on buses.
I've no idea.
If that could be found out, that would be very useful.
Well, thank you for your questions tonight.
You could leave your contact details at the end. I'm sure we could get you that without having to go through the FOI process, because to do that, you'd have to do like the formal request, and we'll try not to go through that. We'll try and give you the answers, because we don't want to be opaque about any of this. We want to be able to give those answers, and in terms of trying to get that message out there, and we're talking about the over 65s group, we've had, I'm just looking at the numbers now, 47,666 impressions in this borough on Facebook on a targeted advert that we've paid for, and the majority of those in the 65 plus group. They've actually generated the highest amount of people clicking through to the website, 38% of those people. So we are doing things that engage lots of different people. And when I say to you, actually, using social media to engage the over 65s, you probably think, well, how does that work? But actually, Facebook is one of the best methods of being able to do that, and I think we are doing that effectively. There is always more that can be done, and all the comments that you've made will be taken on board. Not everyone's on Facebook, which is why all of the other things are in place as well.
Okay.
I'd just like to say my company frowns upon Facebook going on there, because it's a good way of getting yourself sacked if you say something wrong accidentally. But going on that then, on your basis of, say, Facebook, can people lodge their objections on Facebook? The answer is no, I take it.
The best way to put your formal representation or object, as you say, is to fill in the comments form. That's the best way to do it.
And the comments form, which is on the Dudley website,
Yep.
which is that one that I can tell you now, I asked one of my neighbours today for him to go on and go through it. So he said after about 45 minutes he gave up. He lost the will to live, I think his words were. Fair enough, he's a retired gentleman, he's in his 70s, a very clever gentleman, but he still couldn't do it.
We can post one to him.
Exactly, but that's one of thousands that will most probably have the same situation. My friend there, that she said, the way you've gone about it appears to be basing it all on the website, and long as everybody can operate the website, can go on, can navigate around the website, then everybody should be happy. But as we've said, a lot of people, majority of people, don't even know this is going on, because it's been very, very poorly advertised. Also, the people that do know about it are having difficulty via the website. The website, I've gone on and had a look, should I say, and I think I'd say it's poor at best. I mean, I've got a bit of an advantage because I've worked in IT for the last 35 years. So could I work my way through it? Most probably. But Joe average, most probably won't be able to. The other thing I would like to highlight is the fact that personally, some of the people I've spoken to, old school or not, would like a paper copy, whereby if you could provide, say, myself with, say, 5,000 to kick off with, copies, where the people can fill in the comments and put their objections in, I'm happy to distribute those locally by me. But I would suspect that on my estate alone, there are 100 houses. I've spoken to a large percentage of those people, and I would say the majority don't even know this is going on. And also, say on average there's 4 people in a household. I understand you've got to raise a separate dispute or objection. Therefore, just for the 2 sites in Wall Heath, which is the whole book and the triangle, you would look at, literally, I'd use a lot of those paper copies up straight away because I'd suspect everybody will object. So can I ask that you get a load of forms printed, and I'm happy to have them delivered to my house, and I will take some round. But I would just like to back up the comments from my friend there, the fact that I suspect that this will be going in one direction, because I don't think you will have given enough opportunity by advertising this to the public of the area so that they know about it. I mean, we will go out there and publicise it, but it's not our duty. It's your duty to do all that. And it's quite obvious to me, somebody ain't doing their job right.
Thank you, sir. Do you want to respond?
Just simply to say one thing with regards to duty to be able to inform the public and inform residents. I take my duty as a local councillor very, very seriously. That's why everybody who lives in my ward has had a leaflet saying that the Black Country Plan has the Black Country Plan has proposed for Hales Owen. And okay, maybe some members around the room will think that that's not their responsibility to go out and do that, and that the council should do that. But I can imagine just how much it would cost to post a letter out to everybody. And I'd rather just spend the £100 and go and do it myself and make sure it's done. And that's what I've done for my community. So I can show that commitment and demonstration from my position, because I also have my own corner of Dudley Borough to look after and to try and put forward and represent. But certainly from a borough point of view, we have to try and make sure we use what is at our disposal to get to as many people as possible, and everything that's being said will be taken on board. And there are more events in the public that I'm asking for to be carried out, and we want to try and make sure that there is maximum engagement possible, because why wouldn't we?
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. Does anybody else want to ask a question who hasn't asked a question before? And this will have to be the last question, I'm afraid.
Good evening. My name's Karen Westwood and I live in Pensnet. And I would just like to say, further from Mr Phipps's comments, that on behalf of our local residents, I wish to thank Judy Foster for doing exactly what he said he's done for his community. Because if it wasn't for Judy, I wouldn't have had a clue that there was 115 houses proposed on my doorstep. So that's why I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you, Judy, for representing us in Pensnet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to close the public session there. I would like everybody who wants to leave their address details to leave them with a Democratic Officer, Steve, before you go. I think I had a fear that we had a challenge when we looked at the Black Country Plan at the last Scrutiny Committee, that the key was to get out to the members of the public and communicate and get them on side. That is partly the job of the local councillors, but it's also the job of the council to have a very good communications and public affairs programme So I'd ask the officers and maybe the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Enterprise to take note of what's been said tonight and make something happen in the time we've got left during the consultation period, which I believe ends on the 13th of October. We've got to change this. Yes, Councillor Baton.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just make the comments about that. At the last Scrutiny Committee, we did make the suggestion that a specific home magazine, which is delivered to the majority of homes in the borough, was solely dedicated to the Black Country Plan. Now, we've had one go out in the last 2 weeks, I think, with 2 paragraphs in it. That, in my opinion, after we made the points at the last scrutiny meeting, was a real opportunity missed.
Thank you, Councillor Baton. I did ask for Phil from Kappa to be here tonight, but he's not, because I think he needed to hear that. So I'm going to have to close the public session now. You're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but please leave your details behind. You're the people we serve. You've spoken as to what's out there and what's not happening, and it's our job to make sure people involved in the council and councillors, cabinet members do their job and involve you and communicate with you. So I would beg you to leave your details with this gentleman here, please. Councillor Crumpton.
Thank you, Chair. And I wasn't at the last meeting. I'm here as a substitute tonight. But if you look at page 1 of the agenda, paragraph 4, at the last meeting, you resolved that the Cabinet would recommend to consider an extension of the consultation period by up to 4 weeks. Now, I don't know what happened at the Cabinet meeting. I'm presuming that they said no. But having just listened to what has been said and the confusion that surrounds the website that Councillor Phipps just talked about, the fact, and it is a fact, that I registered for the Black Country Plan to be sent to me in my email address, and I've checked tonight because I thought I'd best check again. It hasn't been sent to me, even though I registered well before the time. I've had local residents come to me today because I said, I'm going to this meeting tonight, give us your thoughts. And their thoughts were that they hadn't had it either. We got 1 person out of 6 that had got this come through to them. So that means that 5 people in my ward out of 6 haven't had this stuff come through to them. Now, I know that we've extended this from 6 weeks to 8 weeks, starting it at a period when actually it's further back than it was. So the sort of adverts that went out that nobody read, or at least nobody's had responses to, they were supposed to start in July, wasn't it, or something like that, this one, and finish by whenever it was. It would seem to me that it wouldn't be unreasonable now to consider adding an extension to the end of this period. Councillor Phipps has said he's gone out and he's taken a leaflet round. Well, let's hope, like I'm going to be doing after this meeting, because I wanted to see what was going on here. I'll be going out with a leaflet in my ward explaining this to people. We'll be holding a public meeting in my ward to do these things. I'm going to be asking for officers of resource to come to that meeting. If we all do that, how the hell are they going to fit it in the next 5 weeks? You know, how on earth do we put the resource into this that these people here have just said isn't out there? We want a good response to this. We want people to be involved in it. It's not just about the triangle in Moorheath. It's about the patches of land within some of the estates that we've got, which will take away green areas in otherwise relatively well built up areas, isn't it? And they're not going to know about it. You know, if it's right what Councillor Phipps has said, and what you have just said, Chair, that we want people to be involved in this, let's give them the time and the resource to do it. I also listened to what was said about the website. I went on that today. It took me an hour, and I'm not daft. All right? It took me an hour to suss out how to get from the overall Black Country Plan web into the bit where we can make comments. Now, I started to put a comment into it and then thought, hold on, if I do it now, does that mean this is my comment? It wasn't absolutely clear to me because the paper copy says you've got to do a separate comment for every bit. Does that website allow us to make a comment on all of the bits? Yes, it probably does. So I went through each of it. I think I would lose the will to live if I had to do that on more than one site, because it didn't appear to me for the website, and I say I'm not daft, it didn't appear to me for the website that I wouldn't have to make a separate one for each bit of my ward that this was about. So there's a lot missing here, isn't there? I'm not saying it's all bad, right? By any means, I'm not saying it's all bad. But if 5 out of 6 people plus me that I've spoken to today haven't had the Black Country response already, and it is now 2 weeks into this, isn't it? Then something's gone very wrong with the database of stuff that we've sent out. And nobody's answered the question about that yet. What has actually happened there? So I think what the people here are saying about we need to make this clearer to people. We can do a damn sight better than this, can't we? You know, okay, we can use new technology. Facebook, can't stand the damn thing. Very rarely use it, but I do understand some people use it. But we do have the ability to get out to all of our people out there. Even if it was just the council, for instance, supplying a very detailed account of it to each councillor with enough to go through the 5,500 doors or so in each ward. I think that might come as a bit of a shock to some of the councillors. But, you know, we could do much better than we are doing now. And this is something which is going to affect us for 30 years, isn't it, or more. In fact, for the lifetime of our people, what are they called, not ancestors, the ones that come after. You know, so I thoroughly applaud what they've tried to say tonight. The final thing I'd say is they've had 30 minutes. That's nowhere near long enough. We will be asking during this meeting that we hold either one or a series of scrutiny meetings open to the public for you to come along and tell us exactly how this is going to affect you. Because that document is all about the technicalities of this, isn't it? You know, the fact that it might destroy that wood where you take your dog for a walk or something like that. That's not relevant to this document as such, is it? But it's relevant to us as the people that represent our communities, surely. Ed, you're talking to these people. You represent people in that area. It's bloody difficult, isn't it, for this one? Yeah. So please, let's do more than we are now. Let's extend the time we have. Let's give our people the right and the time to actually be able to tell us what this means to them. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Crumpton. I'm going to stop there because there's a number of members want to speak, and we're drifting into members scrutinising the officers post Helen explaining the process. So, Councillor Phipps, yes.
Yeah, so for Tim's benefit with regards to the reasons why we decided not to extend, as you'll be aware, this is an incredibly tight timescale. And it is, because the amount of work that has to go into what this is, a 450, 500-page document, in order to get that then turned round, all the consultation responded to, because every single comment has to be responded to by an individual in the planning department. That has to then be published. We then have to move on to the next stage of preparing this plan again, but for the final form, before we send that off to the planning inspectorate. But the planning inspectorate, which we are pushing very, very hard, but ultimately, we all know that Bristol can be a law unto themselves. They're giving us, what, an 8 month? We've allowed 12 months because we won't be told how quickly our examination in public will be. Now, from the time we send that off, if it gets seen in the first 2 months, great, we could have extended it for 5 weeks. However, if it's seen 12 months after the time we submit it, we then know that we get into our 5-year housing supply. And what happens when you end up in the 5 year, without a 5-year housing supply, is that anybody who owns a patch of green space, Foxcote Farm, if the owners of Foxcote Farm would like to put a planning application in to develop houses and we reject it on the basis that it's greenbelt, they can appeal to Bristol, and Bristol can legally overturn our decision because we do not have an adequate 5-year housing land supply.
But Councillor Phipps, we've got time, because the bit I'm really worried about here is, are we going to wait for everything and not do things in tandem? You know, I would expect our planning department and others to be starting, and you will be, building together how we're going to move forward to the next phase. The fact that people are making objections, many of them will be the same objections. We know that from what's happened before, or similar ones. It is simply a matter, if we need to bring some more resource in to actually answer those. So we're not saying much. We've already delayed, for some reason which I don't understand, the start of this consultation period by however many weeks it is, to ask for an extension further, just to ensure we get all the voices heard. Surely it's not that much. You know, it's not going to stop our planning people carrying on with dealing with the first tranche of stuff that comes in. Surely you're not going to leave it till the end of the 8-week period, are you, to get all of them in and then start going through it? Because you don't need to do that, do you? You can carry on now.
What work is involved with the next stage, if that's okay.
I'll start and I'll ask Liz, because Liz is much more involved in the detail. But I understand the point you're making, and no, we don't wait and do nothing until the end of the consultation period. But you have to remember, in this consultation period, we're also not just sat here waiting for the consultation responses. So the team are having to answer calls, emails on it, attending events, managing responses, doing the engagement. So that it's not that they aren't doing stuff as part of that engagement process as well. So they're not 100% free to be able to just pick up the responses when they come in. So yes, we'll work on them, but they also have to be seen in the context when we do see that final picture and know the final weight of response and analysis. So we can't do all of it during the period at all, because you do need to see the whole picture. So Liz, do you want to add in a bit more detail of exactly what we have to do when we have to assess those comments and why it takes the time that it does, please?
Do you want to make that part of your presentation on the actual Black Country Plan in the next 2 agenda items?
We can pick it up there. It's not expressly in the report, because I think we covered that a little bit more at the previous committee meeting.
Carry on.
But it's entirely up to you, Chair, wherever you prefer us
Carry
to.
on.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of processing the reps that come in, yes, we don't just sit on them for 8 weeks. No, we act on them straight away. And what we also have to do is obviously analyse those reps, look at the implications on the plan. We also have to see, do we need any further evidence that we need to take account of as a result of those representations? How are they going to impact the plan? If we need that evidence, we have to, make sure we've got the time in place in order to commission it or conduct that evidence ourselves. And as well as in terms of processing the reps, we also then need to look at how the reps are going to change the plan.
Is that representations?
Yes, sorry,
reps.
representations, yeah. So that's what we need to do. We also have to involve a range of departments in that process, as you've seen it in the report. We have to involve health colleagues, education colleagues, transport colleagues. It's a long process. And also the lead-in times to producing the next plan as well. We have to take account of those, and that's maybe 2 months ahead of when it goes to Cabinet. So all that kind of shortens the time period that we have to produce the next version of the plan.
So do you have sufficient resource, or do you need extra resource? Because as a function of this committee, we can recommend that extra resource is put into you to help you. I'm not talking about expert, but there are always other bits of the work that can be done by non-experts, aren't there? It might be embarrassing for you to say, yes, we need more, but please, let us know.
In line with the project plan that we've got in place and the timetable that's on the website at the moment, we've got resource across the Black Country, so there's 4 planning teams involved because it's the Black Country Plan. So we do have the resource in place to process the plan in line with the timetable that's in place at the moment. But if that's made shorter, it's only going to make it very resource intensive.
And just very quickly on 2 of the other points, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep, carry on, Councillor Felix.
On the website, just to make it absolutely clear, you can submit multiple comments on multiple parts of the plan if necessary. And also, with regard to public meetings, if you'd like to organise your own public meetings, I'm sure we'll do our absolute best to make sure that they are staffed and you've got officers there. Although we are looking to hold quite a few more events around the borough, whereby if we can then get local councillors to publicise those to their communities, I would love them to be drop-in. However, health and safety is very stringent in wanting them to be appointments. At the moment, we have run these events. Which locations were they at?
We haven't had them. They're coming, aren't they, next?
They're coming up.
Yeah, we've got 2 next week.
Yeah, there's 2 events in the town hall next week, but what we're suggesting is to keep everyone safe, is to phone an officer in the first instance, because we have a duty officer system. Officers are available, 5 days a week to answer questions. If we can't answer your phone call or your query and you feel that a face-to-face meeting is required, members of the public can book an appointment and attend the town hall next week. But we're not encouraging mass gatherings. We'd prefer it to be on an appointment basis to keep everyone safe.
As of at the moment, I understand nobody has needed to book a face-to-face appointment after speaking to somebody on the phone. However, I personally, if we can square the health and safety and public health, I personally would like to see drop-in events, which is something that I've asked for several months now. We're just trying to be able to get that through the necessary approvals process to be able to have a safe drop-in event, and then encourage communities to get people to engage in that way, because that helps us to focus the resource. And if it's the course, I'm perfectly happy, I'm sure these guys will wince when I say that, but I'm perfectly happy for somebody to sit down in a location somewhere in Stourbridge or Kings Wynford and work from that location for the day and just deal with people as they come in and help them. So, if we can do that, that's what I want to see happening, and that's what I'm working with the team to try and provide.
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. I'm now going to ask Helen Martin and her team to go through items 6 and 7, which is the scrutiny review, and we're part of that process at the moment, and then the Black Country Plan. And I've said to Helen not to rush the Black Country Plan because it is complex. Can I just finish, please? So can I ask Phil, can we make sure we can hear the officers? Can the public hear them from the back?
Can you hear it?
Hands up, when the officers are talking, can you hear? Mostly. So can we just make sure we get the volume up so the public can hear what's being said? For any officers who are going to talk for the next 2 agenda items?
Try not to hit it. All right, thank you.
We ready? Okay, Helen, over to you.
Thank you. So this report, members, is to provide a follow-up report to the Scrutiny Committee consideration of the Black Country Plan on the 15th of July, and specifically to look at environmental and infrastructure requirements as a result of the proposed allocations in that draft country plan. The recommendation is that Scrutiny notes this report, and we're welcoming obviously further questions and comments, but I do hope that the following will answer some of the issues that were raised when we last met. So by way of background, the Scrutiny Committee considered the report and the presentation from myself on the Black Country Plan at its meeting on the 15th of July. This was previously considered by Cabinet on the 5th of July, where they approved public consultation. And as we've already heard tonight, that draft plan consultation commenced on the 16th of August and runs till the 11th of October. As Scrutiny Committee are also aware, the draft plan is a joint local plan prepared by the 4 Black Country authorities, and the plan will direct where new development will be located in the Black Country up until 2039, guiding new housing and employment land amongst other land uses. It also contains a number of strategic policies as well as those housing and employment allocations. To summarise these allocations, the draft plan proposals for Dudley will provide enough land to build 13,235 new homes and to provide 22 hectares of new employment land up to the end of the plan period of 2039. There's some detail at paragraph 8 in some of the breakdown of some of those numbers. In terms of our housing land supply, it's comprised of 12,118 homes in the urban area and 1,117 homes in the green belt. There's a further breakdown of the housing supply in the urban area in terms of brownfield and greenfield sites, and that's also set out at paragraph 8 for you. The rest of the report is now broken down into a number of topic areas in terms of infrastructure and support provision that the Black Country Plan will seek to provide. And through you, Chair, I'll now take those in turn in a bit more detail. So starting with affordable housing, a comprehensive viability and delivery study has been completed to support the development of the draft plan. And this has tested the likely impact of the policies proposed in the plan on the financial viability of different types of sites across the Black Country. For the purposes of housing, this study divided the Black Country into low, medium and high housing value areas. And the study concluded that a maximum of 10% affordable housing will be viable in the low value areas and brownfield sites in medium areas, and 20% on greenfield sites in medium value areas, rising to 30% on all sites in the high value areas. The majority of the housing sites in the urban area of Dudley are located in low value and medium value areas, and the majority of the proposed housing sites in the green belt are located in high value areas. So for context, the current affordable housing policy in the Black Country core strategy sets a requirement of 25% provision for developments where 25 homes or more are being built. And that equates to approximately 120 homes per annum. These are secured through Section 106 planning obligations, and over the last year this equates to approximately 21% of all dwellings, or 922 homes that have been delivered. Under the new proposed policy, its intention by reducing that threshold of the development to 10 dwellings, so not 25 but 10 or more, and reducing the percentage of affordable housing across those value areas in the borough, that this will secure a similar or a potentially increased level of affordable housing provision. The tenure of that affordable housing required over the plan period will vary according to the local housing need and the market conditions. But in general, a mix of tenures will be sought. The Black Country Housing Market Assessment, carried out in 2021, identifies a requirement for 15.7 new homes to be provided across the Black Country area during the plan period to be made available for affordable or social rent, and 8.3% to be shared ownership, and a further 8.7% to be first homes. To meet this level of need over the plan period, 32.7% of new housing would need to be affordable. In terms of employment, the draft plan provides a framework in which we seek to attract new businesses and jobs and offer our existing businesses space to grow in the hope of meeting our employment land needs and increasing the employment opportunities for our residents. We obviously, as you know, have had a heavy reliance previously on manufacturing, and there are long-standing skill challenges that exist in the Black Country. We need more people with qualifications and more people with higher qualifications if we're not going to have a weaker employment and lower earning level within the area. Therefore, the draft plan seeks to allocate 280 hectares of employment land in the plan period and provides for a further 69 hectares of development to come forward through redevelopment of existing employment land and premises. Of course, there's also further land on sites that have planning permission already, and this will therefore provide for 365 hectares in total and accommodating 63% of the forecasted employment need across the Black Country. The provision of land and premises alone will not deliver the necessary economic transformation that is required. This needs new skills and additional training, and therefore it's really important that the jobs created through the new developments across the Black Country are accessible to as many of the Black Country residents as possible. The draft plan has an updated policy, improving access to the labour market, and under this policy, planning applications for large job-creating developments will be required to demonstrate how the job opportunities arising from that development will be made available to our local residents. In terms of education, there is rising demand for school places in recent years as a result of high birth rates, inward migration and retention levels and housing growth, and this has resulted in the significant expansion of a number of our existing primary and some of our secondary schools across the borough. This investment has largely been funded by the local education authority, with some planning obligations secured via Section 106 funds where we've had larger housing developments. So examples of that set out in paragraph 19 for you, but to summarise, they include sites such as the former Ibstock brickworks at Pensnet, which secured over £1 million of financial contributions, and a further figure just short of 400,000 will be secured through the Ibstock site on Stallings Lane. Dudley has seen an increase in birth rates in recent years, which has now started to actually show a decline. And at primary school level, birth rates are projected to continue to fall, and therefore effective plans are to be put in place to manage that downward trend. When undertaking place planning for schools, education colleagues have incorporated housing developments into the projections model, but only where they have either outline or full planning approval, and they have not included other potential developments. Discussions with education colleagues suggest that currently it's anticipated that both primary and secondary school place requirements arising from housing developments over the plan period, particularly in the northwest of Dudley, where it's proposed to allocate larger housing sites, will be capable of meeting through extensions to existing primary and secondary schools, should this prove to be required. However, it should be noted by a committee that should the new housing developments that are likely to come forward onwards potentially fill those spaces in schools which have already undergone expansion and increased their published numbers. And obviously it will constantly remain under review. If it should be determined that some form of new primary school provision is required as the plan progresses towards adoption, this may need to be accommodated on the site, and land will need to be allocated to accommodate a two-form entry primary school. This proviso has been written into the proposed strategic allocation policies for the land at Ketley Quarry and land at Swindon Road and Wall Heath. And there is a housing plan draft policy in the plan for housing that requires new and improved educational facilities to be secured through a range of funding measures. The trigger for this being a housing development of 10 or more homes, which would increase the need for educational facilities. In terms of health and well-being, obviously the plan, as you would expect, addresses a wide range of issues. And the Black Country planning authorities, public health departments, hospital trusts and clinical commissioning groups have worked together in the preparation of this draft plan to assure that it is aligned across those organisations and their plans and strategies. Meeting the borough's housing need will have an impact on existing healthcare infrastructure and will generate demand for both extended and new facilities across the area. The Clinical Commissioning Group and NHS Trust are aware of development proposals within the draft plan and the implications of which will be included in their own plans as they're developed further and funding is secured. Both organisations have identified the need to improve health infrastructure and services across the Black Country. Health infrastructure planning is necessarily an ongoing process, and the councils will continue to work closely with these partners and the development industry to assess and to meet existing and emerging healthcare infrastructure needs. Where appropriate, these will be included in local plan documents and master plans, and it is also proposed to explore co-location of health and other community facilities such as community centres, libraries and sports and recreation facilities. Funding for many healthcare infrastructure projects will be delivered from mainstream NHS sources, but for some types of infrastructure, an element of funding may also include contributions from developers. In terms of transportation, the delivery of an improved and integrated transport network, both within the Black Country and in links with regional and national networks, is a fundamental element in achieving the vision of the Black Country Plan. The development of transport networks in the Black Country is focused on a step change in public transport provision, but also looks at sustainable transport facilities, improving connectivity to national networks and improving the efficiency of the strategic highway routes. To ensure that the transport elements of the Black Country Plan are deliverable, it's absolutely essential that both new developments and existing facilities identify travel and transportation impacts and identify proposals for mitigation. Under the draft policies in the plan, permission will not be granted for any proposals that are likely to have significant transport implications unless they are accompanied by suitable mitigation schemes. Transport colleagues have identified where junction and highway improvements will be required for some of the proposed housing sites, and that includes the proposed strategic allocations that we've mentioned already tonight, such as land south of Holbeach Lane, Wolverhampton Road, Kings Wimford, land at Swindon Road, Woolheath, and land at Ketley Quarry, Kings Wimford. Alongside this, the transportation modelling work being undertaken to support the Black Country Plan will identify locations that require additional transport interventions to support development we're currently proposing in the plan, over and above that already identified in the West Midlands Strategic Transport Plan, commonly known as the Movement for Growth. Once the locations are identified, the type and the scale of the intervention required and the mechanisms for delivery will be incorporated into the submission version of the plan and into the review of the local transport plan, which has recently commenced. Key route network corridor action plans are being developed to address both existing stress points on the network and those likely to result from new developments over the lifetime of the plan, and these will form the basis of future funding bids. Turning now to environmental infrastructure, there have been a number of changes at national policy level and new guidance since the adoption of the original core strategy, and these have been reflected in the draft plan. So, for example, there are new policies relating to sustainable construction, trees, biodiversity, loss of greenbelt land open space, and there's also inside space, water efficiency, accessibility standards, etc. So there are a number of elements that we are having to take into account into the new plan that go above and beyond previous requirements. One of the key issues is obviously climate change. Everybody will be aware of the declared climate change emergency, and the draft plan includes a specific section containing policies seeking to address, mitigate and manage climate change. In addition to these specific policies, there are a number of themes that run throughout the plan, such as sustainable travel, planning for low emission vehicles, making buildings more resilient, etc. And it's also one of the objectives of the draft plan. And at paragraph 39, it sets out strategic priorities 1 and 2 that aim to address that. And then at paragraph 40, you'll see a bullet-pointed list of the issues that developments will need to address in order to show that they are tackling the impacts of climate change. So I appreciate that's a lot of detail, Chair. We're happy to obviously take any questions and comments on that, and I hope that we've covered the main infrastructure areas that members considered at last scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Helen. Thank you. I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm sure every member wants to ask a question. So if members could just put their hands up who want to ask a question or more than one. I thought it would be everybody, but not quite. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Foster first.
Thank you, Chair. I did actually indicate at the end of the previous item that I wanted to speak, and I thought that I had an acknowledgement from you that I would be permitted to speak under that item. So, as it happens, though, the item that I was going to raise is relevant also to this, so I'll get the opportunity to raise it here. First of all, I'm not quite sure why we required an officer to just basically read out the report that we've already read, hopefully. I mean, it was virtually word for word what's down here on the paper. I'm not quite sure that constitutes a presentation. It seems to have filled an awful lot of time, but it's not really a presentation. It's just reading out from the report what we have already read. So perhaps in future, can we assume that members have read their papers so that officers don't have to read the report out to us? The second point I want to make is that we haven't yet discussed or agreed what the process will be for scrutiny. We're going straight into the public session and then we're talking about the Black Country Plan, but we haven't yet talked about the scrutiny process. And, you know, we have picked up on page 5 of the agenda item 7 that the Scrutiny Committee, at the request of the Scrutiny Committee, a further meeting has been arranged. I would seek your confirmation, Chair, that this is not going to be the only meeting that we will be having to explore and examine the Black Country Plan, but certainly the report that's before us gives us the impression that it's a single further meeting that we are having to discuss the Black Country Plan. The third point I seek your view on, Chair, is that of the consultation. Councillor Crumpton has already mentioned that the consultation process should be extended, and I would support that. I also am concerned, from what I've heard from members of the public, but also as well, what my own group has produced as a dossier of errors within the Black Country Plan, let alone how difficult it is for the plan to navigate both online and as a hard copy, as well as the response mechanism, that the process should actually be halted until such time as these errors are put right, because they continue to cause confusion. The errors are still out there on the website. The errors are still out there in the hard copies. As far as I know, they haven't been put right yet, and I seek perhaps a response from yourself and also from officers about what is being done in response to the considerable numbers of issues that we have raised so far, which are continuing to cause confusion amongst the public. And finally, in terms of the scrutiny process, my understanding is that the Cabinet member for the Black Country Plan is Councillor Ian Kettle. I know that we have Councillor Phipps here, but it's a bit confusing for those of us on the opposition benches who we are knowing who to shadow, given that we have Councillor Bayton invited to some meetings, Councillor Ahmed invited to others, but here this evening we have Councillor Phipps and not the Cabinet member for the Black Country Plan actually responding to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Member for the Black Country Plan.
Yes, in fact, according to the Constitution, I've checked it out with Steve Griffiths.
Okay. For all intents and purposes, I am the political lead for the Black Country Plan, along with Patrick Harley.
If you look at the chart,
I'll pick that up with Steve.
Councillor Kettle's lead role is the combined authority.
Yes,
and the combined authority does not
plan.
The combined authority does not include planning.
It does. Well, I checked the Constitution with the Democratic Services a few days ago.
I'll pick that up with Steve then, because that's incorrect. Thank you.
Okay.
Doesn't
so
explain,
that's in hand. Officer Griffiths has spoken to the council leader about that, so it has been raised with him. So I'm sure something will be done about that. To cover off your question about further meetings, I think it's obvious, I was talking to Officer Griffiths earlier, that we are going to have further scrutiny meetings on the Black Country Plan. I don't think we can make those decisions as to when and where now, but after this meeting, I certainly need to pick that one up. The consultation process, we put forward to the Cabinet that it should be extended, and the Cabinet's decision was final that it shouldn't be extended, based on the timeline set down by the government. Yeah, we don't want to be rushing at towards the end of this process, make mistakes, and have things forced on us that we don't want. So I'm afraid it was the Cabinet, which is a body which is above us, which made that decision.
Chair, what about the corrections, the errors that we've identified and the corrections that
I've
we've
read your errors, and they've been sent to the officers, and I would expect the officers to correct those. I think it was Carl who admitted to you he'd made those errors.
Not the only error. There are.
Yeah, well,
I sent a list.
It's a big document. I mean, look at the size of the document that Helen's got there. That's the full Black Country Plan for Dudley. So, if errors are detected, then they should be corrected, and they will be. Yep. Do you want to answer that?
All the errors that have been highlighted to us have been corrected in an errata, and that's on the website. So whilst we can't amend the document that's been through Cabinet, we've produced like an errata which indicates where the error was and what the correction is.
And what about the hard copies are out there?
So those have been, that errata has been then put in all the libraries where all the hard copies are.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Now, we had some hands earlier. I'm afraid I've forgotten who. Councillor Shaleem, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, I have a few questions. I'll ask them together with the officers, can answer them one by one. So, on the consultation, you ask a separate form for each part must be completed. Now, this is fine for online where you can copy and paste, but I believe it's unfair asking residents to submit multiple handwritten responses, especially my ward of Kings Winford North and Wall Heath, where there are 2 sites, and the reasons for comments or objections are more or less the same. So for handwritten submissions, why can one form not be used?
We would accept one form. So all a resident would need to do is indicate, your example, those 2 sites, and indicate whether they want to comment, want to object, or wish to support.
That's great.
And that will be accepted.
We need to advertise that as well, because on the form it says that you have to submit one form per site. So that needs to be amended.
Yeah.
The second question I want to ask, which Andrea asked, I don't believe has been answered. People were asked to register for updates. Why were they not updated? Regarding the Black Country Plan, before to pre-register, people were asked to pre-register to get updates. People were not given those updates.
So what we had to do, because of the GDPR, which is the data protection legal issue, what we had to do was, when we had the consultation base a few years ago, in line with the GDPR, we had to contact everyone to say, do you want to remain on the database? In other words, do you still want to be contacted in relation to the plan? Now, in line with the GDPR, we could only keep the people on the database that requested to be contacted. So everyone on the database is in line with the GDPR, and therefore we had to send an email to those people that wanted to be contacted. Anyone that wants to be on the database now can contact us and we can add them, but we need to have their request in order to add them to the database.
Seems too complicated. I mean, I personally also requested an update before, but I was not given one as well. So how does that all work?
Every email we receive into the Black Country Plan inbox, we action. We've actioned all of them so far. So if you're having issues with responses, please contact us. There's various phone numbers on the website as well. You can also contact the planning policy team as well if you've had any issues, but we have contacted everyone that's sent an email to the Black Country Plan inbox.
Okay, the final question, an observation more than anything else, is, I mean, it's great to advertise on Facebook and buses, but wouldn't it be cost effective to handwrite to every resident? I mean, we had an opportunity with the magazine as well, so would that not have been an opportunity to let everyone know regarding the Black Country Plan and how to get involved in the consultation?
If we can maybe respond back on that when I can speak to Phil Parker, because various different options would have been costed and considered, and there was ultimately a marketing and communications plan that was drawn up in consultation with those colleagues. So if you're happy, Chair, can we respond to that one when we've got the full details?
Yeah, so if you speak to Phil about it.
Which can include the cost question.
It's a shame you couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cowell.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got a few brief points and then some specific questions. First of all, just on a technical point, we seem to move to item 7. I just wondered where item 6 went.
Well, that was the scrutiny process that Helen did cover, and I mentioned that we're part of that process now. Sorry?
We missed item 6.
I
think you've jumped straight to item 7. You've missed item 6. We have not considered arrangements with the scrutiny review relating to the Black Country Plan.
Yeah.
You talked about that though, didn't you? No?
No, I don't think we did.
Yeah.
We're taking...
So that was just for some sort of clarification. The other quick point was we were asked to submit questions in advance, but I don't quite know where they've gone. Are they being dealt with?
Well, I believe Councillor Foster submitted a document along with Councillor Baton and Councillor Ali. I think there were 3 names on the contributions to those documents, which you've had a copy of, yeah?
We have had a copy of that, yeah.
So if you want to ask those questions tonight, which is what I thought you were going to do, you can do by all means. Because they were quite detailed questions.
No, Chair, you've got things mixed up. The contributions made were the errors, not the questions.
There was two documents. 2 documents.
Yes.
There was the errors and there was a question.
Yeah, the errors were the errors were compiled by myself, Councillor Ali and Councillor Baton, not the questions.
So the questions were compiled by
By the Labour members on the on the committee as requested by yourself, Chair, for anybody who got any
Yeah,
questions.
and I thought your name was on that email.
It was, but
Well, there you go.
you referred to an email from Councillors Baton and Shaukat Ali. That was the list of errors.
Well, do you want to ask the questions that were on the email from the Labour group?
I'll ask some of my questions then, if that's okay.
I've got the document there.
Yeah, Chair. I think we just, sorry to interrupt, and if it's okay with you. In terms of this meeting, as has already been said, it seems to be a little back to front. But what it has demonstrated is the complicated nature of the Black Country Review and the fact that people need information which they can understand to make, you know, justified and representations. Now, first of all, I think it's really important. Patrick Harley says, Councillor Harley says that, he talks of himself that being the listening council. And I don't think he's done much listening here, because majority of the committee at the last meeting raised the very point that because of the complicated nature of this, we need an extended consultation period. Now, and all the people here today are again saying that we do need that. And then the other thing is we need to agree the process rather than ask the questions. Helen, without disrespect, that was painful kind of listening to all of that, because there's a lot of information in this here, and what we should be doing is we should be looking at each one of those in detail. And you've listed a couple of themes there in terms of environmental climate change, social economic impact, infrastructure. What we should be doing is dedicating a meeting to each one of those themes, and then asking questions, asking members of the public who want to come along and give their views on that, or maybe have just a whole separate day where members of the public and others can come along and give their views.
Well, that might be one of the things that we discussed, but if you remember at the last meeting, I said to you, if you wanted to drill down in detail, you set up a task and finish group with a small amount of members who sit outside this meeting and drill down with the officers onto those areas. I asked for questions to be fielded and you've put them forward, and now you don't want to ask them. I just don't understand you, to be honest. There's questions you put forward to Democratic Services that you were going to ask at this meeting tonight, and you don't want to ask them now.
Questions, Councillor Foster will be able to explain the background to that. And I don't know why we were asked to submit questions in advance.
In order so that we could field the appropriate officers to address them. Now, as it transpires, a lot of the officers are on holiday, which is a risk that we knew about when we decided to have this second meeting, as it was in the holiday period. We can't help that if people are on holiday.
Because this should be a planning meeting in terms of how we...
It's got an agenda. It is a planned meeting. You've had time to read the agenda and understand the documents, and now you're saying it's a back-to-front meeting.
It is, Chair. This is a very poor exercise in scrutiny.
Item 6. That was a description.
We agreed to a scrutiny review, and this meeting is about arranging that scrutiny review. This is not a scrutiny review. If you imagine this meeting here is a scrutiny review, and that was evident, thank you, Helen, that is not the case. And I don't believe that what Councillor Foster put forward at the last meeting for a scrutiny review is being answered.
It isn't. The questions I've provided are basic questions for the duration of the scrutiny exercise, whether that's 2 meetings or 4 or 6 meetings. That's what I thought I was being asked for. There's certainly no intention to ask all of those tonight. They're divided into various themes, and we wouldn't expect to cover them this evening, Chair.
Well, the main point of tonight, and the main section, is to scrutinise the details in
No, it
agenda
isn't, Chair.
item 7.
This is not scrutiny. This is not a proper scrutiny exercise that we are conducting right now. This is what we need to discuss. We need to discuss the process as part of planning, as Councillor Barnett has said. Can we proceed to do that, please?
Can you repeat what you just said?
Can we discuss the process of scrutiny? This is a planning meeting. This is about determining
So you want to
how
go-
we run a scrutiny exercise.
You want to go back to agenda item 6?
This is what we should be doing, yes. Well, we're not going back to it. I think we missed it, didn't we?
So you want to go to agenda item 6?
Well, that's ultimately for you to determine, Chair, but we haven't covered it, so I assume that would make sense.
Helen, do you want to go through that?
I apologise, I'm not clear on what I'm being asked on the agenda.
No, nor am I, really.
I don't know if Steve can provide some clarity, then I'm happy to answer with some clarity.
Chair, if I can help, agenda item 6 says the committee to consider the approach to scrutiny.
Yes.
Well,
and
we
that's
are.
what but we're not. I mean, you're asking us to ask questions on what we're talking.
This meeting, was about bringing back the Black Country Plan to scrutinise in more detail, and that's exactly what Councillor Foster said last time.
It was, but we'd expect this first meeting to talk about planning the process of scrutiny, because this is a major issue for people in Dudley. We need to do it properly. We're not going to just hold this meeting tonight and that be the end of it.
No, we might have to have another scrutiny meeting, but I can't see why we need to scrutinise the scrutiny committee when we're trying to scrutinise the Black Country Plan.
We need to have proper planning in place.
Well, you're not making sense, I'm afraid, Councillor Foster.
Chair, I think that you need some instruction in scrutiny and how to manage the scrutiny process. We are here tonight as what we thought was a planning meeting. Chair, if it helps, the questions that I provided did actually say something. The first section was actually about the process, which I'm assuming that Democratic Services and yourself have noted. That might have been the best place to start.
Right, so if you go to agenda item 6. Yeah. Okay. Or we can do that later, can't we? Yeah. Okay, so the recommendation on agenda item number 6 is that the committee consider the approach to the scrutiny review relating to the Black Country Plan, and that the lead for law and governance, following consultation with the chair and the vice chair and appropriate directors, be authorised to take any necessary actions to progress the scrutiny review. So we're talking about progressing it beyond this meeting tonight.
Yes, and the mechanism.
So we've already done agenda item 7. So who would like to make any comments about agenda item 6? Councillor Barnett.
Right. Thank you, Chair. The Black Country Plan is clearly a very, very complex document, and we've had some further complexity added to it in agenda item 7 tonight. Agenda item 7, frankly, it's harder to understand why that was on the agenda than agenda item 6, which was clearly about planning a scrutiny review. The themes that have been identified that's not about scrutinising the process by which the Black Country Plan came into being and how it's being progressed through the council. Yes, there are elements of the Black Country Plan, but the things that I'm really interested in, I want to see happen, is how we came to the evidence, for instance, that suggests we need the housing that is allocated to Dudley. I believe the evidence is there. I believe it's come from government, and that Councillor Harley's spoken to ministers about it. I'd like to see that evidence and see exactly what that conversation was about. I'd like to see a communications plan. Apparently there is one. That'd be great to see, because currently it's failing massively. There's a lot of people down there who clearly don't know what's going on. Sorry.
And if you remember...
I don't mean it that way. I mean, it's clear that it has been badly communicated. Apparently there are events happening. There's events. There's no timetable. Whether these events happening, there's no timetable. It's also quite clear that we failed to resource it properly. It's quite clear that that's happened. We haven't got sufficient resource to provide an appropriate consultation to the residents of Dudley. We're failing them. And a very minor point, but I see that we're trying to improve the website as we go along and help the residents understand it better and be able to use it better. But all of this is encroaching into the consultation period. This should have all been tested before we even began. It's not good enough, and that is the purpose of having a scrutiny review of what Dudley have done about the Black Country Plan. It's not necessarily, it can be part of what the Black Country Plan is doing as well, in terms of housing allocation and environmental concerns, etc. I accept that, but a lot of it is about how Dudley's done it, and have we done it right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. I think if you remember back to the last meeting, I did ask the officers for a detailed communications plan that could go out to the councillors, so we could run in parallel with that. Yep.
Thank you.
Right, who have we got next? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair.
And then Councillor Bate.
Yeah, if it helps, perhaps can I propose a structure moving forward for this scrutiny exercise? I take your point, first of all, about having a task and finish group, but what was clear from my group at the last meeting is that we wanted, because of the significance of these proposals, it was important to have these discussions in public and invite members of the public to express their concerns and raise their questions in public and have responses to those questions in public. I think that there are probably at least 3 or 4 meetings that this committee may need to hold. There have already been themes proposed, and they could be taken meeting by meeting and explored in detail, perhaps with recommendations from individual members about who we could call as expert witnesses to give evidence, as well as those who've been involved in developing the proposals, and also members of the public as well. So might I make that suggestion? And in terms of the issues that Councillor Barnett has raised, I'm mindful that time is moving on now this evening. Perhaps the first meeting that we have, the first proper meeting we have in terms of scrutiny, explores some of those questions about the need, the projected housing need and type of housing that is being proposed. That might form part of the first scrutiny meeting that we have, because clearly these things need to be researched and responded to. And we don't expect necessarily for there to be a straightforward response to those questions this evening.
I'll take your points, but this is a scrutiny committee which has many other items on the agenda. And from what you've described there, we would spend the rest of the year just on the Black Country Plan, and we can't do that. So we will have to, outside of this meeting, look at some suggestions going forward.
I don't see any reason why that we couldn't have a series of scrutiny meetings, as we did, for example, with the COVID issue. And I'm sure Councillor Baton may give some insight with her detailed involvement in that, in terms of how that ran.
And that was a COVID scrutiny committee?
Sorry?
Councillor Baton and Ed. Yeah, go on, carry on.
Okay, so I'll come in on that. So the COVID scrutiny exercise that was undertaken last year was undertaken through the Health and Adult Social Care Committee as the umbrella committee. So yes, it conducted all its normal, year of work, but on top of that, it did the additional scrutiny exercise of looking at the whole of the council and partners' response to COVID within the borough. So it was a lot of work, there's no doubt about it. And I think we probably did a meeting, with the normal programme of work, I think it was probably a meeting a month. So it was quite comprehensive, but what it allowed us to do, which I think was very valuable, and I think that's kind of an observation that you and I would share from the combined authority scrutiny panels that we've done together, has been the importance of being able to have independent witnesses. So, you'll recall the Black Country review that we did on the economic planning, and we called into that somebody from the LEP. We had the guy from the Barrow Cadbury Trust presenting a background and an overview of where things were. And I think that was a really, really important way to help us understand what the baseline was, if you like, and to develop the scrutiny from that. So I would think that the best way of conducting this type of scrutiny exercise is to have that facility so we can call in independent witnesses. So we might want somebody involved in health planning from the CCG or from the Trust, for example. We might want somebody from Homes England talking about the methodology behind the numbers and the values of the houses that we're being asked to provide. We might want to call in somebody from a neighbouring authority, actually, like South Staffordshire, to give some evidence about their plan. So I think it's about how we can incorporate that in a way that is meaningful, aids the process, and we actually get to where we need to be for the people of Dudley. Thank you, Chair.
So I think what you're suggesting there is a single item scrutiny committee. Not something that I can't see will fit in on the agenda on this scrutiny committee.
I think the single item is the Black Country Plan.
Yeah,
So
COVID was a single item.
So
You're suggesting
the response to COVID was the single item. So your single item is the Black Country Plan, but then you have the strands that flow out from that about your independence and your witnesses and the people who you might want to call into that to give you evidence. That's how I would see it running. So, and I think you'd identified 3 broad themes in the plan, haven't you? The economic, the environmental impact. So I don't think there was any issue with the broad themes, but it's then how you drill down into those broad themes. But I think the single item is the plan.
Yeah, which is exactly what we did in the combined authority. Only we called it a task and finish group.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think
We can't go to that level of detail within this scrutiny committee. We've got too much on the agenda.
No.
So I think probably need to take advice on how we form this single item Black Country Plan scrutiny process. Ed, you had something to say?
Yeah, I mean, I had no intention tonight of coming here to review the scrutiny. I thought we did that at the last meeting, and we agreed to have a scrutiny meeting tonight on the Black Country Plan, which is why we've advertised it to the public. Yep. And members of the public have turned up and asked far more sensible questions than I think any of us have asked tonight, because they're actually getting down into the nitty-gritty of the plan and putting officers and cabinet members to task over it. We only have a few weeks left of this consultation, and there's many questions to ask. And I think us sat here arguing about how many meetings we're going to have and what form they're going to take is just going to prolong the process for members of the public who just want answers. Yes, we can have more meetings, but surely we should just be using this opportunity tonight to put those questions that the members of the public have asked us to ask.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Atkins, you've been waiting a while now. Please carry on.
I too am a substitute tonight, so I'm grabbing my opportunity to actually ask a question and following on Councillor Lawrence's request to actually ask questions. We've heard from a number of Kingswinford North and Ward Heath residents tonight, my own ward, and I commend them for coming out tonight and bearing with this process. I think we've heard tonight about the importance of getting that public engagement right and the appropriateness of that engagement. As Councillor Lawrence says, we're running out of time really to scrutinise this process and make sure that this engagement is done right. We've heard tonight that there's 2 town hall events happening. My question is, where are these being advertised? I don't think it goes far enough. We've got 2 of the largest areas proposed in Kingswinford North and Ward Heath, and I implore the officers to get out into the community and have those public engagement sessions with the residents so that they can ask their questions and not limit it to a central hub miles away from where these properties are going to be built. So can we just have an answer as to what that engagement is going to be and what the time frame is for it and how we're going to do that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. I think the biggest issue tonight isn't scrutinising the scrutiny process, it's what the public have said out there. And it's a complex plan. I don't even understand it fully myself, even though I've read it several times. And I think we have to, we have to have that, and it's a bit late for it now, that communications plan, which I did say at the last scrutiny meeting to get, just a 3 or 4 page plan that the councillors could understand what events were going on. Councillor Barnett has already mentioned too that I didn't even know about either, which I think is a very poor effort from the officers. So I think that the important thing is how do we have a plan quickly so that the councillors can do their job with the public to make sure the public understand the process of the plan and can have their voices heard. That's more important than us bickering about the scrutiny review. Excuse me. So I'd like to task the officers tonight to go away and think about that, and Simon, yourself, Councillor Phipps, of how we get together very quickly a communications plan for every ward on what's going to go on, and I'll speak to Simon, the office, whatever his name is, who runs the community forums, and see if we can get those kicked off before the end of the scrutiny process. But at the moment, from what I see, is this process with the public is failing. It's not us that is failing, so it's no good scrutinising our process, it's how do we serve the public. So I want the officers to go away in conjunction with some of the Cabinet member councillors and get that communications bolted down so that everybody knows. Use community centres. And I think we should take this back to our leader and with Councillor Phipps so that we can get much more engagement from the councillors and the officers locally. I have to say I'm appalled from what I've heard and seen tonight. And I have to say that you, the Labour people, have not helped. Forget about the process.
Chair,
it's
you're
about
not
the
acting
public.
like a chair at all here.
So,
I hate to say this, but you have just said that we've got an appalling plan that's been put
yes,
before
I
us,
agree
right?
with you.
So why the hell aren't we as a scrutiny committee looking at it and saying what's wrong with it?
Absolutely.
Not just saying, oh, we'll get the community centre open. You can't say that. You're not in control of the community centre.
We're here. We've got 5 weeks. We've got 5 weeks.
Because we've messed about and done nothing.
Shambles.
You're not scrutinising anything by doing this, are you?
And don't forget, Chair, tonight people have only had half an hour and a lot of people are away at the moment. I want my residents here and having a voice. That's the point of scrutiny. It's not just about us, it's about members of the public as well. Being able to speak to councillors and professionals and others who might have answers for them.
Any other questions? Councillor Carroll.
I just want to go back, if I may, to this thing around pre-registration for information. I know one of my colleagues behind me did raise that earlier, but I actually raised, I logged on specifically, having seen the press release, And I also advised some of my colleagues, not only on the council but elsewhere, to sign up. So that overrides GDPR, because I did it literally 2 weeks before, I think, when it was in the paper, and I still had nothing. So I just think you need to be aware that that's potentially quite an important part of the process, because people would have seen it, signed up and thought, right, they'll tell me when I've got to do this, that and the other. And Councillor Jackie Cowell's got all this paperwork, but I'm afraid Miss Jackie Cowell has got no idea, because I've still seen nothing. So I think that needs looking into.
Yeah, we can look into it. Every inquiry we've had come through into the Black Country Plan inbox, we have actioned. So if you've got any issues with getting a response back, please.
We logged on to that. I think it's some Opus Consulting or something.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So we have had some issues with the automatic replies coming back to residents. So where we've been notified about those that where they haven't received them, we have sorted those out straight away. So if you have a specific issue with it, please just email the Black Country Plan inbox and we'll action it.
Okay, but I would just make one point. I can do that, but again, it's the wider public, they don't know.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. One last question from Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, thanks. I've been waiting all night, if it's all right to actually ask a question on the Black Country Plan. The website has obviously been talked about tonight, and we know it's not great. I was going to raise it, but a couple of my residents have. Firstly, can we get together with the comms team, some professional marketeers, and make some changes, if possible, to try and make it a little bit more graphical, a little bit more clear? It's not a leaflet, it's not a document. It can be done quite quickly. It can be improved. So could we have assurances that someone can have a look at that and try and improve it? And then my second question is, if we are still struggling with the website, can we have the council's help in producing the comments forms? Because we have held meetings at community centres and we've had people turn up and we've actually ran out of the comments form. The other day I had to go to the library to get their supply to bring them back, and even the library only had about 10 copies of the form. So due to the fact that the website isn't great, will the council please provide us with what we asked for in regards to the comments form, to save our volunteers having to print their own and use their own ink, etc. Because I just don't think that's fair.
We can definitely provide more copies. Yeah,
as many as we
fine.
want.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to look into it.
I've just emailed print service to ask how much it would be for 20,000 copies. I'll pay for them myself if I have to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence and Phipps. On that note, I'm going to call the meeting to a close tonight, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending and the members of the public.
Decided going forward about scrutiny.
Well, we're going to go away and review with the officers, getting a communications plan together, and whether and when we need to hold another scrutiny meeting on the Black Country Plan, or whether we need to have a separate single subject scrutiny meetings. Yeah? We can't do it within this scrutiny group. We haven't got enough time. We haven't got enough bandwidth. So I'm closing the meeting on that point. Yes, you can, sir.
Having listened to your comments and discussions going